So good evening, everybody, and welcome to our first training here at Clinicians of Color. We are so excited about this opportunity today. It's really going to be relaxed and laid back here. We have an awesome speaker presenter with us who's sharing a dynamic opportunity for you all as well. My name is Monica Coleman, and I'm the training director at Clinicians of Color. And some of you may have already seen that we have such wonderful news for you for the year of 2022. Happy New Year. On July 25th, 2022, we are very excited that Dr. Joy DeGrew will lead us in a 2-hour healing workshop and discuss her book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. We are also adding other healers for this half-day webinar. And then October 16th, 2022, we will have an intimate conversation with the Stedman Graham on leadership and business strategy. We're making this a half-day conference on all things business related by adding other speakers and topic as well. COCO Association members get priority pricing for these events, and you can join our COCO Association membership at academy.cliniciansofcolor.org. So for today, your trainer is Linda Lewter, a licensed professional counselor specializing in Imago therapy, solutions-focused therapy, and cognitive behavioral therapy, among others. Linda is a certified Imago relationship workshop presenter, EMDR trained, and certified life coach. Linda's goal in working with individuals over the last 16 years or more has been to focus on their relationships with others, uncover unconscious thoughts and drivers, help them regulate their emotions, and bring healing in areas of childhood wounding, and help them understand how emotions and memories shape them today. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Linda Lewter.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. As everyone continues to come in, I am so glad to see some familiar faces out there. And I will share my screen. Let's see if I can do this. We practice this. Let's make sure I can do this now. Let's see. All right. Okay. So do you see just the one picture?
You're good to go.
Perfect. Okay. So I wanted to start. So I don't consider myself a great speaker. I'm just enthusiastic about subjects. Right, and Imago is one that I am definitely enthusiastic about, but I'd like to kind of have a conversation. Like she said, I know there's quite a few people on, so I'm trying to see the chat. For some reason, I can't see the chat room anymore. I think my screen is too big.
We'll monitor it for you, Linda.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So yeah, you may have to tell me what people write. So what I wanted to start with is this whole topic of relationships. And I know when I was starting out in, well, even before I got into private practice, when I started out working for various agencies, and one of the agencies was the YWCA. And I worked with a lot of families, and there was a lot of families in conflict. And a lot of times we would do in-home sessions. And I was so nervous, you know, working with the kid is one thing, but when you have to work with the whole family, you know, that kind of brings about a lot of emotions, right? So I'd like you all to kind of jot down some of the okay. My screen skipped to, let's see, I want to go back. Okay. So when we start to work with families, what are some of the emotions that come up? What are some of the emotions if if you all could jot down some of those in the chat, and then let's see. Okay, I think I can see some. Okay, okay, I figured out my chat button. Okay, I see resentment, frustration. Okay, I see they're coming. Anxiety, guilt, yes. Loneliness, stressful, fear, loneliness, yep. Hurt, anger, excitement, defeat, exhaustion, rage, betrayal. Yeah, these are good ones. These are good ones. Disappointment, embarrassment, hopelessness. Yeah, distrust, shame. These are all good. So when you consider all these feelings, so when I went into private practice, I was a little, skeptical of seeing couples, because now it was just going to be me and the couple in the room and sitting with all of these feelings. And my biggest thing was, how am I going to manage, especially those emotional reactive couples? So a lot of times I would kind of, drop back. If someone says, oh, we got a couple, I might not volunteer for that person. I might go for the individual, because I'm like, okay, I think I can deal better with the individual as opposed to the couple. And then just my own issues, having these feelings when it came to myself, thinking shame, rejection. I may be dealing with these feelings within myself, not just feeling these things about the session, but having some of these feelings myself. Now, what do you think about the couples that are coming? What are some of the feelings that you think they're having? And see if we can start putting some of those in the chat. Yeah, fear, conflicted, yep, concern, nervousness, uncertainty, skepticism, yeah. Scared, worried, yeah, I see they're coming. Betrayal, exhaustion. So anybody noticing a pattern that some of the same feelings that the couples may be coming in with are some of the same feelings that we may have when we come into the therapeutic room? Embarrassment, guarded, some of the same feelings. So let me move to my next. So when couples are coming, they're having those same feelings around intimacy and the conflict, failure, rejection, being unlovable, all of these things. So when we're working with couples, it's really important. It's good to have some tools and techniques and strategies, but it's really important to have also a support system, right? And that's the thing that really drove me to Imago. And let's go to my next slide. So when couples are coming, they're often concerned about, they're facing the decision. What are we going to do? We're having this conflict. Do we stay or do we leave? Or do we stay and fight? Do we stay and live parallel lives? Right? Do we leave and start over with somebody else? Or the last option is, or get conscious. And oftentimes it's this process of getting conscious that we know the least about. And that's where Imago comes in. Now, Imago, because when I first heard the word, let me back up. When I first learned about Imago, I didn't learn about it in school. I actually was watching Oprah. And on an Oprah show, Harville was talking, she had him as a guest, and he was talking about this theory that he had, I guess, founded or co-founded. And as I was watching that episode, it's just the things that he was saying, it just made so much sense. Just the way the concepts and how it got to the root issues and things of that nature. that I said to myself, I said, when I get the time and the money, that's definitely something that I'm going to look into. Imago is a Latin word. It's a play on the word image. And imago is about the image that we hold of our partner, that we hold of what we anticipate a significant other to be, right? It is, we often get attracted to someone who kind of fits the ideal of what we think a partner should be, right? And a lot of times, no, let me not get ahead of myself. Some of those traits seem familiar because these traits are traits of people who happen to be in our history, right? These people that we are attracted to, they have some of the, what we call the lost parts of ourselves, meaning that when we during our developmental stage, that's when kids are their truest selves. During our early developmental stage, that's when we're, I think, our truest selves. And then as we start to develop, we start to change and somewhat start to be modified based on our caregivers. Our caregivers then will start to, they're training us up in the way that, they feel that we should go. But sometimes it's in conflict with who we really are, right? So then we call it lose parts of ourselves because we're trying to kind of please our parents or those in authority. So we start to lose parts, of ourselves to be more acceptable, in society. Okay. And then the next slide here. Let's see. I'm trying to move to the next slide. It seems like my slide is, do you see the slide moving?
It's still on what is Imago?
Okay. Okay. I'm trying to get it to move to the next slide, but let's see. Let's see next. Okay. It seems like the slide is not moving. Let's see. Okay, it seems like it's stuck. I may have to stop sharing and then start sharing again. Let's see. Let's stop sharing. And then let's go back. Let's see if I can get it to share. Okay. Okay, now I'll start sharing again. Okay, can you see that one?
Yep, you're back on.
Okay, now it's back on. Okay, so when it comes to some of the models, one of the models that I know I learned in school was Gottman. When it came to marriage counseling, I think that was one of the leading theories that I learned. And a lot of the theories that we learn, we call it, it has an individualistic paradigm. Let's see if I can get it to move to the next slide. Okay. And this paradigm is based on a representative, and the representative oftentimes is society, or the way we, what we think, how we think relationships should be. So society kind of sets the tone for what we think things should be, which is also known as kind of experts. We kind of model our relationships after what the experts say. It's usually someone outside of ourselves. Sometimes it can be maybe your own parents, or it could be a couple that you look up to. But usually it's from the standpoint of someone else. It has a very outward looking comparison. when we kind of compare ourselves to other relationships. Let's click the next one. And oftentimes labels are used to describe the differences. You've had a relationship where you sometimes may compare your relationship with someone else, and you may say things to your partner like, why can you be more like this person and more like that person? It's because the idea that we have a relationship is coming from these external sources. Let's see, move here. Reality is objective, and our personal way of living is the best way. So in relationships, there's something called symbiosis. When we get into a relationship, we're often attracted to a person because of the differences. But then when we're in a relationship, we often will start to say things like, things would work out better if you was more like this, or if you saw it my way, if you did things, the way I do it, it would just make more sense. And then that tends to be the place of contention, because the other person also has an idea of how they feel things should be. They may feel that they're the expert on how things should go, right? Get it, move to the next thing. Those differences from us, we look at them as bad and as a threat, because you don't do it this way or do it that way. It becomes a bad thing. And it becomes something that needs to be fixed. So oftentimes then we have couples that come into marriage counseling wanting us to fix the other person or save the marriage or set things straight. And it's this thinking that puts a lot of pressure. I know when I would be in sessions, now I have a couple, they're coming in, they want me to fix them. And the reality is, I know that I can't fix them, because nobody can you can't fix the other person. You can only be in charge of yourself. So this individualistic paradigm tends to be problematic, and it also tends to be stressful, because it puts a lot of stress on us to perform, to do something, right? So the thing that I appreciated about Imago is that it is a relational paradigm. And how does that differ from the individualistic paradigm? Well, one thing is we value ourselves and others, value for ourselves and others is assumed. Okay, the statement that we use a lot says, all people make sense. Right? So now something, you may not make sense to me, but 9 times out of 10, you make sense to yourself. So if I make the assumption that all people make sense, it may not make sense to me. If I come with the curiosity, I'm sorry, just water. If I come with the curiosity, then the thing that we know about the brain is that it's very difficult to hold to do things to the brain. It's very difficult for the brain to do 2 things at the same time. So if I'm curious, then I can't be angry. Or if I'm curious, there's not a lot of room for frustration. So if I try to understand, okay, what you're saying or what you're doing doesn't make sense to me, but let me be curious about why you might be doing that particular thing. Another concept that we hold is that all people are good at their essence. And what we experience of others is mostly adaptations or ways that we have found to survive. So it kind of goes back to what I was saying, when there's a concept of experts, or we hold our parents or people outside of ourselves as the authority, we tend to then modify our behaviors to fall in line with what we think we should be doing or how we should be in a relationship, right? But if we understand that it's not so much about others, but it's really about, it's a concept that we talk about, the space between two people. So I tell couples, they're as individual as they are, that's how individual their relationship is. So therefore, their relationship should not be compared to another, but it needs to be looked at as a individual construct in itself that doesn't have to be compared to anyone else. The next thing, the conflict. Conflict is part of the growth process. So initially, when I went into private practice and I had to see clients, conflict was one of the things that I dreaded for a couple to come in and, they're at odds, they start to raise their voice, and it's like, oh, I'm sweating. I'm like, oh God, please don't let this get physical. I try to make sure that there's no space between me and the door. So maybe I can make a quick escape if I need to. But now when couples come in, the thing that I learned with Imago is that Imago is not just a group of techniques and strategies, but Imago actually changed me. It changed the energy that I brought, right? It changed me. So therefore, remember initially, all of those feelings that we have when couples come into a session, you bring that into the session. So I'm in there and I'm kind of sweating and trying to anticipate how it's going to go and, trying to make sure, oh, am I going to be able to handle this couple? Now, when I go into sessions and when they start arguing or bittering, trying to tattletale on each other and, they come in and I say, what brings y'all in? And then they just want to go at each other. And because of his, doing this and that, I just sit there and I'm like, perfect. And when I'm saying perfect, they're like, what? I'm like, because you're at this place of conflict, that tells me that there's growth. There's growth trying to happen, right? So now I don't focus on the problem. When couples used to come to me, and that would be one of the first things, because, individuals come to you and you ask them, what brings you in today? And when couples will come in, I say, I may say some of the same things, what brings you all in? And then they just kind of go for it. They could talk for the whole hour or so just about what the problem is. But now when couples come in, that's not how I start. I start with one of the main questions I ask is, I take them back to when they first met each other. So I know they came in because they have a problem, but the first thing that I ask is, what was it that attracted you to this person? And I take them there. And when I take them there, it's not so much about what they have to say, but I'm looking at any softness. I'm looking for, what I'm trying to do is assess that space between, right? And when I can get them talking about what was the thing that really attracted them to each other. So I work from a strength base. And once we can start there, that tells me whether we have something that we can build on. Because if they can't say what attracted them, if they can't tell me the story about when they first met, and, maybe what they were attracted to and what drew them to that person, when they can tell me that, that's where I know we have something we can work with. So I try to highlight that. So that kind of starts to give them hope, to let them know that this is not a mistake, because once you're feeling all those feelings that we had talked about before, shame and disappointment and all of that, the first thing that we start to think is, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I'm with the wrong person, right? And the other thing that happens is people start to say, well, why do I need to experience this right now? If I'm telling them what you're right where you need to be, conflict is change trying to happen. They're saying, well, how is this, whatever brought them into the office, how is this working in our favor? So then that's when I can go into explaining that they're right where they need to be and start to talk about the stages of relationships. And let me get to that.
Linda,
Yes.
I know you want this to be interactive. So before you move on, we have a
Okay.
couple of comments in the chat that I thought were really good to go
Okay,
ahead
yes.
and address.
Please,
So
'cause I can't see the chat.
Shelby R was asking if they can't answer that question about what attracted them to the person in the first place, what would happen in that situation? And then we also had a question from Nicole Jones about suggestions for books to read.
Okay. So the first question, if they can't answer the question, that's a good one. You know what? In all of my years now that I've been doing the Imago, and I've been doing Imago at least 5 years or so since I've been certified, I've never had a couple who couldn't answer that question with some type of, oftentimes they'll start laughing and, they'll tell me, but if they couldn't, I think I wouldn't try to make up something. I'd sit back and ask them, well, if they couldn't think of anything, I'd ask them, well, where is it that they're trying to go? I'd ask them, well, where is it that they're trying to go now? Because the thing is, and I tell couples, Imago counseling, it is not about, I definitely want to save their relationship. And I know that people come because they want, to save, oftentimes they come because they want to try to save the relationship. But I let them know that the journey that we're going to go on, when we get to the end of that journey, they may decide that maybe they're not a good fit, that maybe they do need to separate and go separate ways. So I'm not trying to create anything. I'm trying to work with what they have. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
I definitely think it makes sense.
Yeah,
it's like you're not going to force anything. You're trying to let them lead the session. And you had some comments too from Navita Charles, who said that she thinks that taking them back to when they first met each other introduces hope to the situation. It helps them remember what led them to falling in love and connecting with each other. Michelle Wiley also said that most couples remember the answer to that question and that it tends to soften the session. And Kimberly, I can't see your full name, sorry, Kimberly, but Kimberly said that this person also asked the couples to share how they first met in their first date. Yes. So you got a lot of people sort of agreeing with what you're saying here, getting the gist of what that technique is about.
Wonderful, wonderful. And then to the suggestion, of course, of the book, is Getting the Love You Want. That's one of the first books that Harvard wrote was Getting the Love You Want. He has since written a new book, which I do have a copy of it here. See if you'll be able to see it. It's Doing Imago Relationship Therapy. Now you can see the size of this. It's, I wouldn't read it late at night, but it does have some good information in here because he talks about a lot of the concepts. Imago is just filled with a lot of concepts and science, a lot of brain science. It's just a lot. And you can tell by the size of this book, he put it all in here. And the thing I like about Imago is so vast that it's not a type of theory that you have to do. It's not and or, it's not like I have to do Imago or Gottman. I can do Imago and include Gottman, and I often do. I often include other theories even in the midst, because like I said, couples are as the couple is as individual as individuals, as unique as individuals. So what I like to do is attend to the space. And once we kind of create the space that we need, what is needed is going to come to the surface. So if I need to do a Gestalt type of activity, we can do that. You know, I can bring other theories in. Imago therapist often does mix other things in. EMDR, if I'm working with a couple and there are some traumatic, things going on, I may do a session, individual session with one of the partners to do some EMDR to maybe move beyond some of that. Okay, I do see the chat now. Doing Imago therapy. Yeah, in the space between. Yes, that's the one.
You got a question in there. I'm going to keep up with it for you, Linda. So
Okay.
don't feel the need to read the chat because it's getting pretty active.
Okay.
But you have a question here. If domestic violence is involved, does this make the couple ineligible for Imago therapy?
So it depends. I guess that's really the question. So I have had situations that couples have sought me out and there was domestic violence involved. My first, and most of the time it's whoever the violence is against, they normally will seek me out. Well, my first concern is safety, right? So before we get involved in Imago therapy, I may have a session that talks about safety. And I let them both know that, my first and foremost concern is safety for them both. So, if it's a female and I've had, females, contact me privately, I give her resources to help her to, be safe. I let them know we do not condone violence. If the other person is open, of course, we can recommend anger management and, things of that nature. So it just depends on what is happening. But yeah, if there are addictions, domestic violence kind of comes in line with addiction, because if you're dealing with addictions or domestic violence, if you don't address that, the rest of it is going to be very difficult. It's very hard to create a space of safety if you don't feel safe in the relationship. So it really kind of depends. I really recommend whatever it is that the person needs for them to be safe. That's what I would recommend. So it may not be Imago therapy at that time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Were there any?
So we'll let you keep going through the slides, but I've asked people to continue to put questions up, and then I want to give you time I know you got more in your presentation, so we'll come back with more questions.
Okay, just a little bit more. So the main thing that I like to explain to couples is the stages of relationship. So I tell people it's 3 stages of relationship. The first stage is romantic love, right? That's the stage when you first meet someone, they catch your eye across the room. And what happens in this stage is like the brain, all those feel-good drugs act like anesthesia. So you're starting to get to know this person, but it's under the influence, so there are some things that may be coming up, but you don't feel it. It's not as profound to you. Now, other people that may be watching you and observing you, they may see some things and they may even try to tell you some things. You can think back to those times that you might have yourself found yourself in romantic love and other people were saying certain things. And what do we say? We say, you don't know them like I know them. It's different. Yeah, because it is different, because I'm under this influence of this anesthesia and I'm not even feeling things all the way, right? And from this drug stage, I decide to take the journey to stage 3. And stage 3 is real love, because that's what we're all after. We want real love. And because I'm under this influence of this drug, I feel real hopeful that I can get to real love with this person, right? So, and I say this is the trick that the universe plays on all of us. So from stage one, we head off to this journey, real love, and we find ourselves smack in the middle of stage two. And stage two, that's usually when I see the couples in the office. It's that power struggle. It's the struggle phase. It's the conflict, right? So at this stage, what has happened is because we weren't designed to live, we can't live with that anesthesia for the rest of our lives. As much as we want to ride off into the sunset, it really doesn't work like that. So when we find ourselves in the stage two, what happens is the drugs start to die down. And now all of a sudden, some of those things that other people were saying, now we start to kind of see some of those things. So people end up in the office because they think, oh my God, what did I do? And how did I miss this? And they're thinking that maybe I'm with the wrong person, what is going on? Maybe we can fix them, all types of things. If they could just see the error of their ways, be more like me, everything is going to be okay. So they come into the session wanting the therapist to straighten the other person out and help them to see things more clearly, right? Because if we can do that, we can get to that stage three where everybody wants to go. Everybody wants to end up in real love. And the Imago way is to reframe stage two, to see that conflict says that you're on your way. If you're in conflict, you're on your way to stage three, but we're going to reframe it. And we're going to reframe it by using the tools and the techniques, built into the Imago to help us deal with that conscious phase, because that's what's happening. We've become conscious. We've gone from that anesthesia under that love drug, and now we're becoming more conscious, and that may not feel good. Right? So it's to bring meaning. Imago brings meaning to stage two, helps you to reframe, to re-image the person in maybe in your mind, to re-image relationships, to maybe give you a better understanding of what is relationships all about. Because we think, okay, relationships is about me getting what I want. Relationship is about meeting my need, right? But the reality is the relationship has a far greater meaning. And I created a t-shirt. I probably need a pattern, but what I said is on the front of the relationship, it says, it takes one to heal one. And on the back, it says relationships. Because relationships, the true meaning, along with children and grandchildren, yes, all of that, but the true meaning and true purpose of relationship is really for growth and healing. And once we can start to understand that relationship is really about growth and healing, and we can re-image our partner and maybe even re-image ourselves and re-image our expectations, then we truly can ride off into the sunset to real love, because real love is that romantic love without the anesthesia. And it's cyclical. It's not somewhere where it's not a stage that you live in continuously, but it's a wave. And there's a wave pattern in life. I tell my clients that life, when you go to like in a hospital, when someone's hooked up to an EKG machine, on the little screen, there's that line that goes up and down, right? And I asked them, I said, well, what's happening with the person when that little line is going up and down? The person is, what's happening? Are they alive or opposed when you see that line that's like flat line, right? So when the line is going up and down, they're living. And so therefore, that's really what life is about. When you have ups and downs in your relationship, it says that your relationship is alive. Because if your relationship didn't have those ups and downs, then that means maybe it's flatline. And I have seen people in flatline relationships, right? It's a little unbearable, but what people do when they live in a flatline relationship, what they have to do is they have to take exits. They take an exit. They take an exit to go, because we all crave life. We all want to be fully alive. And if you can't be fully alive in that relationship, you're going to seek some life somewhere. So we take exits to some things that does give us life. And I know the big one is always affairs. Yep, this is the affair. We dip out of the relationship into something else to get a little more life. So I don't make excuses for affairs, but I try to help to re-image why we do some of these things, even addictions. Addictions is another way to cope with that situation that maybe has flatlined, you see. But once we can kind of understand what stage 2 is about, then through Imago, we can help the couple to, number one, become fully alive to themselves, to maybe regain and restore some of their lost parts, and help to explain